Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're doing something kind of different. We're going to dive into two books at once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's Everything is Obvious by Duncan Watts
Yeah.
and The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Two for the price of one.
Yeah, exactly. Double the brain power needed, but I think we can handle it.
I'm sure we can.
So the interesting thing is that both of these books kind of tackle the same idea,
Okay.
which is that our common sense can, sometimes lead us astray.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Especially when we're trying to understand, like, the world around us, all the complexities.
Yeah.
But they come at it from, like, slightly different angles.
Yeah.
Watts, he's looking more at the big picture, like big social phenomena.
Okay.
So things like how cities grow or how, trends catch on
Right.
and where common sense kind of fails to explain those things.
Interesting.
And then Dobelli, he's more focused on, like, everyday thinking and all the mental traps, he calls them cognitive biases, that we fall into without even realizing it.
Those sneaky little biases. I'm guilty of those for sure.
Me too. So basically, our deep dive mission today is to extract, like, the practical wisdom from both of these books.
Okay.
Figure out how we can use their insights to become sharper thinkers, avoid those pitfalls.
Like a mental upgrade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Less bugs, more awesome.
Yeah. I love that. Let's do it.
So let's start with the obvious. Watts, his main point is that we tend to overestimate how much we understand about why people do the things they do, especially in social situations.
Oh, I see. Like we think we've got people figured out.
Yeah, totally. And he uses this example, the Milgram experiment.
Oh, yeah. The one with the electric shocks.
Yeah, crazy, right? And it turned out that more people were willing to obey those, like, authority figures than anyone expected.
It really challenged our assumptions about like good and evil, didn't it?
Right, and Watts is saying, hey, in these big complex systems, you can't just boil it down to individual good or bad intentions.
It's more complicated than that.
Yeah, there are all these other forces at play that shape how things actually turn out.
Okay, so if we're misjudging situations and people's actions because of these, hidden forces,
Right.
how do we even begin to make sense of it all?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's where Dobelli comes in.
How so?
Well, he gives us these tools to decode those hidden forces, the cognitive biases.
Okay.
For example, there's something called survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias.
Yeah, it's this tendency we have to, like, focus on the success stories, the outliers.
Ah, so we only see the winners, not all the people who tried and failed along the way.
Exactly. Like, think of all those Become a Millionaire books.
Right. They make it sound so easy.
But they never talk about all the people who followed the same advice and didn't become millionaires.
Yeah, it's like we're missing a huge part of the picture.
Totally. And Dobelli's point is, by understanding survivorship bias, we can become more discerning about the advice we take, the models we follow.
Yeah. Makes sense. So it's not just about common sense, it's about understanding these biases that can trip us up.
Exactly. It's like a whole new level of awareness.
So to make better decisions, we need to be aware of these biases.
Yes. And that's just scratching the surface. There's so much more to uncover in both of these books.
I'm ready to dive deeper. What else have these authors got for us?
Well, that's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to get into next. Stay tuned, because we're going to unpack some seriously practical tips from both Watts and Dobelli that you can use to level up your decision-making game.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Let's do it. Welcome back. So, you know that feeling when you get stuck watching a bad movie?
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's terrible, but you've already invested like an hour of your time.
Ugh, yes. Happens to me all the time.
So you're like, well, I might as well just finish it.
I hate that. But what does that have to do with, clearer thinking?
Well, Dobelli calls this the sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, we get so attached to the time, money, effort we've already put into something that we keep going, even when it's clearly not working out.
Oh, so like staying in a job you hate just because you've been there for years.
Exactly. Or like pouring more money into a failing project, hoping it'll magically turn around.
Ouch. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, it's tough, but sometimes the smartest thing you can do is just cut your losses and move on.
Walk away.
Yeah, it's hard to let go.
Totally.
But recognizing that sunk cost fallacy helps us make decisions based on what's best for us moving forward.
Not dwelling on the past.
Right, not on what we've already invested. It's about the future.
So it's like asking yourself, if I were starting from scratch today, knowing what I know now, would I still choose this path?
Exactly. Detach from those past investments and make a clear-headed decision.
Love it.
Now, another bias, especially with all this information overload we face.
Okay.
Confirmation bias.
Oh, yeah, confirmation bias. We hear about that one a lot.
Yeah, our tendency to just seek out information that confirms what we already believe.
Right. Like if you think pineapple on pizza is gross, you're only going to read articles about how terrible it is.
Yeah, we create these echo chambers, right? Surrounded by opinions that just mirror our own.
And it feels good.
It does, but then it's hard to see the other side.
Makes sense.
It's like social media, it's designed to just feed us what we want.
Totally. It's no wonder we get stuck in those filter bubbles.
Exactly. But just being aware of it, that's a huge step.
Okay.
Then we can try to actively seek out different perspectives.
Challenge our own assumptions.
Right. Get comfortable with maybe being wrong sometimes.
I like that. Makes me think about how much we rely on experts these days.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, especially when it comes to complicated stuff, making big decisions.
Yeah.
It's tempting to think they have all the answers.
Sure, they're the experts.
But both Watts and Dobelli have some interesting things to say about the limits of expertise.
Oh, okay. So they don't always have all the answers.
Not necessarily. Watts points out that even experts, they're prone to biases too.
My son.
And their knowledge is limited by their own experiences.
They don't know it all.
Right. Sometimes their predictions are no better than random chance.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. We put experts on this pedestal, but they're just as likely to fall for those mental traps.
So should we just ignore expert advice then?
Not exactly. It's more about being discerning.
Okay.
Questioning assumptions, remembering that we all have the power to think for ourselves.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Respect expertise, but don't blindly accept everything they say.
Makes sense. But how do we know when to trust our own judgment versus relying on someone else's?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And it's something we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll talk about some practical strategies from Watts and Dobelli.
For actually putting this into action.
Exactly. Turning these insights into, real-world decision-making.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, so we've talked about all these mental traps we fall into, but knowing about them is only half the battle, right?
Right. Absolutely. You can't just nod along and say, oh yeah, confirmation bias, I know that one.
Right. How do we actually use this stuff to make better decisions?
Yeah, we need some practical strategies.
Exactly.
And luckily, both Watts and Dobelli, they offer some really good advice.
Okay, so where do we even begin? It all feels so, complex.
Well, one of the most powerful things, and it's a common thread in both books, is this idea of small experiments.
Small experiments.
Yeah, it's about testing and learning rather than trying to, predict and control everything.
So instead of making these huge, elaborate plans, we should be thinking more like, what, scientists?
Exactly. Applying the scientific method to your life.
Okay, I like that.
So you have your hypothesis, you test it out, you see what happens, you gather data.
And then you adjust based on the results.
Right. It's like those tiny course correction maneuvers spaceships do.
Oh, interesting analogy.
They don't try to predict every little gravitational wobble.
Right, they just adjust as they go.
Exactly. Much more effective than trying to plan for every possible scenario.
Especially in today's world, things are changing so fast.
Exactly. And Dobelli, he reinforces this by emphasizing breaking down big, overwhelming problems into smaller, more manageable pieces.
So don't get paralyzed by the enormity of it all.
Right. Focus on what you can control right now.
Okay.
Take action, learn from it, and then move on to the next step.
So it's like progress over perfection.
You got it.
Small wins, constant adjustments, course correcting along the way.
Exactly. And this ties into another important point.
Okay.
The power of feedback.
Oh, yeah, feedback. We talk about that a lot, but I think we often forget about it.
It's easy to skip over, especially when we feel this pressure to constantly be doing.
Right, but without feedback, we're kind of flying blind, right?
Totally. We need that information to tell us if we're actually on the right track.
So feedback isn't just like asking other people for their opinions.
Right. It's also about developing that self-awareness. That ability to reflect on your own thoughts, your own actions, and see if they're aligned with your goals.
Like that inner scientist. Right?
Exactly. Constantly observing, experimenting, refining their understanding.
I love that. And this whole conversation makes me think about how important it is to question everything.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, both Watts and Dobelli talk about challenging the status quo, considering different perspectives.
Right. It's about cultivating that healthy skepticism.
Yeah, not just blindly accepting things as they are.
Keep that spark of curiosity alive.
So it's not that common sense is bad,
Right.
It's more about using these tools to fine-tune our thinking.
Yeah. Challenge those assumptions. Make choices that are more aligned with reality.
Exactly, like upgrading from a basic GPS to one with real-time traffic updates.
Love that analogy.
Okay, so to sum it all up, we've got small experiments breaking down complex problems, seeking feedback, questioning everything.
Sounds like a recipe for success.
I think so. Any other nuggets of wisdom?
Well, both Watts and Dobelli emphasize humility.
Humility.
Yeah, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
And that's okay.
It is. It's what allows us to be open to new information, learn from our mistakes.
To keep growing.
Right. So I think the key takeaway here is that common sense is valuable, but it does have its limits.
Absolutely.
And by understanding those limits, developing those critical thinking skills, and, embracing that ongoing journey of learning, we can all become better thinkers.
Make better decisions in all areas of our lives.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that was a fantastic double deep dive. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I feel like my brain just got a serious workout.
Mine too.
So, to everyone listening, stay curious, keep questioning, never stop learning.
Couldn't agree more.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.